and welcome to vlog number 3. Vlog 1 I thought was a success with 30 views. Vlog 2 blew it out of the water with over 100 views. Don't mean to draw a trend line, but if I did, we'd be off the page. Vlog 3, we're looking at servicing a pair of these Hope F20 pedals. I'm going to cover questions like, do you need that special Hope tool to extract the nut from one of these? And what is the best way to take that bushing out if you haven't got any fancy tools? So if you want to know the answers to those questions and just generally how to take these apart and put some new bearings in and whatnot, then keep watching.
So I bought these pedals secondhand and they're well overdue a service. There's a lot of play in them, so I need to strip them down and replace all the internals. So first of all, you need to remove the end cap, so you'll need a M8 and an M6 Allen key to remove this, and just spin that out. Keep hold of the end cap because you'll need that later, although we will be replacing the seal. Now, can you use a normal socket? No, unfortunately not. It's just a bit too wide. I have seen videos of people who've ground them down to make them fit, but to be honest, I think you might as well just get the proper tool. The Hope tool will work with either a socket set or a adjustable spanner. Just pop the M8 in the pedal axle again and loosen that off. It's a small M5 lock nut, which because it's a nylock, you're best to replace each time just to make sure that it stays on. You should now be able to pull the axle out and see what the damage is like inside. As you can see, mine has definitely had a bit of a hard life. Those seals definitely need replacing and it needs a good clean. Now you can use your 6mm just to push the bearings out of the other end of the pedal. Okay, stage 2 is to degrease everything. I use this brake pad cleaner. You really should wear gloves with it. You don't need to use this spray, but you can just use a rag and maybe some soapy water or something. But I find it works quite well, so I'm using it. While you're doing this, take the 2 seals off the axle. Mine weren't in a great condition, so they will need replacing. You might get away with being able to reuse yours, especially if you do this a bit more regularly and give them a little bit of grease when you put them back on. My axles were looking a bit rough, so I used a kitchen scourer to try and clean them up a bit. I wouldn't use anything more abrasive than this though. This area in the middle is where the bushing rotates on, and mine were still a bit pitted, so they may need replacing in the future. Okay, so here's the fun part, stage 3. Let's make a bush extractor. I used an M10 coach bolt I had around, but any type of M10 bolt, as long as it's long enough, will be fine. This is way too long, really. Just remember to thread a nut onto it, because that you'll use as a stop later. You want to cut down the length of the bolt right on center. I did this for about 20mm. This is the way that I've developed for removing the bushing, but other people have used drill bits and taps to be able to get the bushing out, but this seemed to work quite well. Next, you want to drill a hole at the end of the cut you've just made. This just gives it a weak point that it can flex about. What you're essentially creating is something that will work a little bit like a when you put a raw plug into a wall. You'll hammer down a screwdriver in that slot, which will force the 2 bits out either side, and that will then grip onto the inside of the bushing, and then you'll be able to tap it out with a hammer. Make sure your nut's positioned about 25 to 30mm from the end of the extractor. Then put it into the crank side of the pedal, and now slot in a screwdriver and try and slot it into that cut that you've made on the end of the extractor. If you position it up against something hard and tap it with a hammer, you'll be able to force the screwdriver into that gap, and that will then push out against the bushing, and you keep tapping, and there it is, it popped out. To be honest, this worked way better than I was expecting, and you can probably get it out with a screwdriver and a hammer, but you'll risk damaging the pedal more. So next up, let's reassemble the pedal. Put some lithium grease onto the inside of the pedal on the crank side. I'll be honest, I think I put in a bit too much, so there is a happy spot between having enough in there to keep everything lubricated and make things easy to put in, and having too much in there that it just clogs everything up. Now, there is a right and a wrong way to put this bushing in. You can see that there is a slight chamfer on one edge that needs to go into the pedal first. The bush itself is self-lubricating, but you do want to put a little bit of grease on it just to help it go in, but it doesn't actually need grease itself to run smoothly. I'm using a carpenter's quick grip to push the bushing in, but you could use a G-clamp, or if your bench vise is big enough, you could use that too. Use a socket that's just the right diameter to sit nicely on the bushing. You've got to be careful here because you don't want to damage or nick that bushing, because then that's game over. You'll need to use a new one. So push this in or wind it in with your G-clamp, and you'll need to use a socket extension as well to get it fully in. There is a stop in the pedal that it will push against, so you can't push it too far, but you can push it not far enough. So yeah, just keep going until it stops. Next up, you want to put some grease onto the axle where the two seals are going. Next, you want to put the pedal face lip seal on. Now, there is a right and a wrong way around for this. You want to put the side which has got the two seal edges facing the pedal, and the one seal edge facing the thread of the pedal axle. It's the way it looks like it should go on, so it's not that hard to work out. And then the pedal shaft double lip seal is the same either way, so just slot that on and you should be able to kind of work out where they want to sit, because they just naturally are the right diameter for them. I'd pop on a little bit of grease onto these, and when I say a little bit of grease, I mean less than I'm putting on here. I think I put on way too much. Also put a little bit of grease on down here by the small M5 thread, because that's where the small bearings will sit on the axle there. Now you're ready to reinsert the axle into the pedal body. Now fit one bearing at a time, using a little bit of grease on each one. I found that using the Hope tool to push the bearing down was best, because the socket didn't quite allow you to push it down far enough. You'll also find that if you've used plenty of grease, that you might find that there is a bit of an air pocket formed, and it's a bit of a bouncy, squidgy kind of feel, so you'll need to kind of like burp that air out by allowing the axle to kind of push back out again, and just release that air. You might have to do that a few times as you're putting these in one at a time and greasing. Next, you want to fit the M5 nylock nut. I couldn't find a torque setting for this, so I just guessed. And finally, let's refit the end cap. I'm just going to replace this O-ring seal as well and pop a little bit of grease on it to help keep the North Wales elements out of my pedals, and hopefully keep those bearings lasting as long as possible. Theoretically, the bushing should last longer than the bearings because there's no moving parts, but that will only be the case if you manage to keep the dirt and grime out of there. So you might be, if you do this service regularly, able to only replace the bearings. And once you've screwed that end cap in, that's one pedal complete. You can move on to the next one. And hopefully all the play's gone and there's no wobble. It is normal for the pedal to feel a little bit stiff after doing this and perhaps not spin quite as freely, but that will loosen up after the first ride or so.
Hi guys, well I hope you've enjoyed this vlog and you found it useful, and I hope I've inspired you to have a go at making your own tools. There's something really cool I think about seeing a tool that you made in your toolbox. And if you did enjoy this vlog, then do check out my other 2 vlogs. The World Ends Cliff Path, it's one of the longest descents without interruption in North Wales, so that's really good. And also I've got a vlog which is all the black descents at Llandegla. And do give a like to this video and subscribe to see some more content if I make some more videos. And do drop a comment if you know of a better way of doing anything that I've done in this video, because I'm sure people will read them and find it helpful. Till next time.